2:43 in the afternoon. Galdo Island, Yellow Sea off Korea, 42 kilometers north of the northern limit line. Broad daylight. Scorching sun. 12 U.S. Force Reconnaissance Marines have just been surrounded by 240 North Korean soldiers. 35 armored vehicles. Mi-24 Hind helicopters circling overhead. Naval patrol boats cutting off every escape route. No need for searchlights. Perfect visibility under the afternoon sun. They'd come in as fishermen. They'd photograph something North Korea didn't want the world to see. And now Kim Jong-un himself had issued an order from Pyongyang that would chill any American commander to the bone. Capture the spies, execute them at sunset, broadcast it to the entire world. The North Korean plan was simple. 12 Marines trapped, outnumbered 20-1, isolated on an island with no way out, public execution at 6 p.m., sunset, maximum propaganda impact. But Kim Jong-un made 5 catastrophic mistakes. First, those 12 Marines were Force Recon, the deadliest operators in the entire Marine Corps. Second, they'd prepared defensive positions in the cliffs on the island's north side. Third, the USS America, with 1,800 Marines, was 42 nautical miles off the coast. Fourth, the 7th Fleet had already authorized a full combat rescue operation. Fifth, the President of the United States was watching via live satellite feed and spoke 2 words: bring them home. What happened over the next 3 hours and 17 minutes became the most audacious daylight marine rescue operation ever executed and the most humiliating military disaster in North Korean history. The island of Galdo was officially listed as uninhabited on every map, but satellite imagery from the National Reconnaissance Agency had revealed something impossible 3 weeks earlier. Massive underground construction, heat signatures consistent with heavy industrial machinery, constant movement of camouflaged military vehicles. The CIA assessment was blunt. North Korea was building a secret underground assembly facility for Hwasong-17 intercontinental ballistic missiles, hidden from the world, potentially operational within months. The Pentagon needed physical proof. Satellite photos wouldn't be enough to justify action before the UN Security Council. They needed boots-on-the-ground evidence. At 11:30 that morning, 12 Force Reconnaissance Marines departed from the USS America in 2 fishing boats disguised with South Korean registration. Daylight insertion, hiding in plain sight among the Yellow Sea's maritime traffic. Mission parameters: land on Galdo Island posing as fishermen seeking shelter. Locate the facility. Photograph everything. Collect soil samples for radiation analysis. Extract before 4 p.m. In and out during daylight hours. The team leader was Captain Eric Dalton, a Force Recon officer with 6 prior combat deployments, an expert in denied territory operations, the kind of man the Marine Corps sent when nobody else could go. His briefing to the team before departure was crystal clear. They'd land at noon. 3 hours max on target. Find the facility. Photograph everything. Collect samples. Extraction at 3:30. Dressed as fishermen, the North Koreans wouldn't look twice. At 12:07, the Marines hit the southern beach of Galdo. Perfect insertion. Civilian clothes over tactical vests. Fishing gear as cover. They moved inland and dispersed formation. Thermal camouflage under civilian jackets. Suppressed weapons hidden in tackle bags. Professionals down to the last detail. At 1:47 in the afternoon, they found it. Massive steel doors over 6 meters tall built directly into the mountainside at the island's center. Industrial ventilation ducts emerging from the ground every 50 meters. High-voltage power cables running underground to hidden generators. 3 guard posts with armed soldiers. Security cameras covering every approach angle. And something else that sent a chill down Captain Dalton's spine despite the heat. The portable radiation detectors were showing signatures consistent with ballistic missile propulsion components. This was real. Captain Dalton transmitted to the USS America in code. Target located. Underground facility verified. Heavy security but avoidable. Photographing now. Radiation detected. This was exactly what they were looking for. Over the next 31 minutes, the Marines photographed everything. Every door, every duct, every parked military vehicle. Soil samples collected in sealed containers. At 2:18 in the afternoon, the documentation was complete. Mission successful. Captain Dalton's order was simple. All teams to Rally Point Alpha, we're going home. But at 2:23 in the afternoon, everything changed. A North Korean security patrol making its rounds spotted something that shouldn't have been there. The glint of a camera lens in the sunlight. Seconds later, security cameras confirmed the impossible. Men with non-fishing equipment moving near the perimeter. American gear visible in broad daylight. Alarm triggered. Sirens wailing across the entire island. In less than 4 minutes, 240 soldiers from the island's security detachment were deployed. 35 military vehicles blocking every route to the coast. Mi-24 Hind helicopters lifting off from a hidden platform. Chaho-class naval patrol boats closing the maritime perimeter. The Marines ran toward the extraction point on the southern beach. But North Korean forces had already cut off that route. Captain Dalton transmitted to the USS America what no commander ever wants to hear. They were compromised. 240 hostiles converging from all directions. Broad daylight. Nowhere to hide. Couldn't reach the extraction point. Moving to alternate position on the northern cliffs, they needed immediate support. The response from the USS America came in seconds. Extraction boats were pulling back. The island was too hot. They couldn't approach under that volume of fire. Find a defensive position and hold. The cavalry was on its way. At 2:35 in the afternoon, the 12 Marines reached the northern cliffs of the island, a rocky outcrop with a natural defensive position, 30-meter vertical drop to the ocean below, only 2 land approach routes, both narrow and exposed. Captain Dalton assessed the situation with the cold calculation of a man who'd been in worse spots. They'd dig in here. The North Koreans clearly wanted them alive for propaganda, because otherwise they would have used those helicopters to wipe them out already. That meant they had time, the fleet would come. They just needed to survive until then. The Marines established a perimeter in under 3 minutes. Combat positions. With overlapping fields of fire. The 4 Claymore mines they'd brought oriented toward the approach routes. Defensive grenades distributed. At 2:43 in the afternoon, the North Korean forces completed their encirclement. 240 soldiers. Heavy machine guns clearly visible. BTR-80 armored vehicles in position. All under the bright afternoon sun. And then came the news that confirmed Captain Dalton's worst fears. At 3:05 in the afternoon, North Korean forces on the island received new orders directly from Pyongyang. Kim Jong-un had been personally briefed on the situation and he was furious. 12 American Marines had penetrated North Korean territory, photographed a secret military installation, transmitted evidence to the enemy. Unacceptable. His order was relayed to Lieutenant General Ri Yong-ho, commander of the 4th Coastal Corps of the Korean People's Army, a 32-year veteran of the armed forces, responsible for defending all islands in the western sector of the Yellow Sea. A man who had publicly sworn on 3 separate occasions that no American soldier would set foot on territory under his command while he still drew breath. Kim's order was explicit. He wanted them alive. Capture all of them without exception. They would be executed at sunset at exactly 6 p.m. The execution would be broadcast live worldwide during prime time in America. They would show the world what happened to spies who violated the sovereignty of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. General Ri Yong-ho replied that in less than 3 hours, he would have all 12 Americans on their knees in front of the cameras. At 3:18 in the afternoon, the North Korean assault began. First wave of infantry advancing in echelon formation through the eastern approach route. PKM machine guns providing covering fire. RPG-7 grenades launched against the rocky positions. All visible in the clear daylight. The Marines returned fire with lethal precision. Controlled 3-round bursts. Every bullet counted when you only had the magazines on your body. North Korean soldiers falling. But more kept coming. Always more. Wave after wave. At 3:42 in the afternoon, Captain Dalton sent a priority transmission. They were in heavy contact. The North Koreans could see their positions perfectly. Ammunition was holding, but wouldn't last forever. He confirmed the enemy wanted them alive because they were using non-lethal suppression tactics mixed in with the assaults, tear gas, stun grenades trying to overwhelm them without killing them. They needed urgent extraction. The response from the USS America was the best news Captain Dalton had heard in his entire life. Rescue force launching now. Estimated time of arrival 90 minutes. The President of the United States had authorized full combat operations with no restrictions. Air support inbound. Navy SEAL teams preparing for insertion. Hold that position at any cost. Your brothers are coming to get you. 90 minutes. Against 240 soldiers. Captain Dalton did the math. These were going to be the longest 90 minutes of their lives. At 3:58 in the afternoon, the North Korean forces changed tactics. Tear gas grenades raining down on their position. Smoke screens trying to blind the Marines and force them out of their protected positions. But force recon trains for combat in contaminated environments. Gas masks on. Filters activated. The fight continued without pause. At 4:17 in the afternoon, a North Korean officer appeared on the western approach route carrying a megaphone. He spoke in perfect English, probably trained specifically for these psychological situations. His message was clear. American Marines, this was your last chance. Sunset was in less than 2 hours. At 6 o'clock sharp you will die in front of the cameras of the entire world. If you surrender now, you will be treated as prisoners of war. If you continue to resist, General Ri Yong-ho has authorized full lethal force. You cannot escape. You cannot win. Choose to live or choose to die. Captain Dalton's response was transmitted on an open frequency so every Marine on that rock could hear it, so the USS America could hear it, so the Pentagon could hear it, so it would be recorded in history. We are United States Marines. We do not surrender. We do not retreat. We fight. And if you want us dead, you're going to have to stack 100 North Korean bodies trying to make it happen. Relay a personal message to Kim Jong-un from me. Your secret is out. The whole world now knows about your missile facility. The photos are already in Washington, and 12 Marines are about to make your army the laughingstock of the planet. Send your best men. We'll be right here when our brothers come to get us. If you're enjoying this video, smash that like button right now and drop me a comment. It really helps the channel and motivates me to keep researching stories like this one. At 4:23 in the afternoon, aboard the USS America positioned 42 nautical miles south of Galdo Island, the largest rescue force assembled in Korean waters since 1953 was ready to launch. Broad daylight operation. Unprecedented in modern history. The components were overwhelming. 16 MV-22 Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft carrying 320 Marines with full combat loads. 8 AH-1Z Viper attack helicopters armed with Hellfire missiles and Hydra rockets. 4 F-35B Lightning, 2 stealth fighters from VMFA 211 Squadron carrying GBU-53 precision bombs. 2 Navy SEAL teams in high-speed insertion craft. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyers USS Benfold and USS Milius moving into position for naval fire support with their 5-inch Mark 45 guns loaded and ready. The mission commander was Colonel James Mitchell, veteran of Fallujah, Kandahar, and classified operations that would never appear in any public report. His message to the rescue force was brief. 12 of your brothers are surrounded on that island. North Korea wants to capture them and execute them at sunset for worldwide propaganda. That is not going to happen under any circumstances. We are going to extract those Marines. We are going to destroy that missile facility. And we are going to personally teach Kim Jong-un what happens when someone threatens United States Marines. Wheels up in 5 minutes. At 4:31 in the afternoon, the 4 F-35B Lightnings crossed into North Korean airspace flying in broad daylight. Visible on any radar, but too fast and too advanced for any North Korean air defense system to intercept. At 4:34 they released their payload. 8 GBU, 53 Stormbreaker precision bombs guided by laser and GPS, 225 kilograms of explosive each, falling directly on the North Korean armored vehicle positions surrounding the Marines. The explosions were visible from kilometers away. Trucks disintegrating, artillery positions vaporized, command posts obliterated in fractions of a second. The 25mm GAU-22 cannons on the F-35 seconds finished the job, sweeping through the exposed infantry formations. At 4:38, the 8A H-1Z Vipers arrived, flying 15 meters above the blue water of the Yellow Sea. AGM-114 Hellfire missiles tracking the North Korean patrol boats blocking the maritime routes. Direct hits. Vessels disintegrating in fireballs. 608 Hydra rockets saturating the beach positions where the North Koreans had set up heavy machine guns. At 4:51, the destroyers achieved firing solution. The Mark 45 naval guns opened fire with 5-inch shells. Precision bombardment destroying the bridges connecting to reinforcements on the mainland. Roads cratered. Any hope of additional support for North Korean forces on the island died in those impacts. At 4:56, General Ri Yong-ho realized he had lost. His forces were being systematically annihilated. His final transmission to Pyongyang was cut off mid-sentence when a Hellfire struck his command post directly. At 4:42 in the afternoon, 2 Navy SEAL teams had hit the island from the south. Aggressive daylight assault, securing the perimeter for the main force. At 4:47, the 16 Ospreys appeared over Galdo like a storm of rotors. 320 Marines jumping before the wheels even touched the ground. But they didn't land next to their trapped brothers. That would have been predictable. Instead, they landed on the opposite side of the island, directly behind North Korean lines, cutting off any retreat route, surrounding those who had done the surrounding. North Korean forces suddenly found themselves fighting on 2 fronts simultaneously. The 12 Marines defending from the cliffs, 320 fresh Marines attacking from their rear. At 5:02, Captain Dalton received the transmission he'd been waiting for over 2 hours and 32 minutes. This is Rescue Actual. We have 320 Marines on the island, full air support overhead, SEALs controlling the southern perimeter. You are no longer surrounded. We are extracting you. All teams collapsed to primary landing zone. You're going home. This video took me weeks of research. If you want more content like this, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any stories. At 5:07 in the afternoon, the 12 Marines who had held out alone against 240 soldiers linked up with the rescue force. But Captain Dalton didn't order immediate evacuation. He ordered a counterattack. They'd held that position like legends. Now they were going to show North Korea what happens when you threaten force recon. They weren't running. They were fighting their way out. And they were destroying that damn missile facility on the way. At 5:15, the combined force of 332 Marines assaulted the underground installation. C4 demolition charges on the steel doors. Thermite grenades down the ventilation ducts. Fuel air explosives in the access tunnels. At 5:23, the detonation sequence initiated. The mountain seemed to breathe fire. Underground explosions cascading in sequence. A massive fireball visible from 40 kilometers away. North Korea's secret ballistic missile assembly facility was reduced to smoking rubble. At 5:29, all Marines were loaded onto the Ospreys. At 5:34, the last aircraft lifted off from Galdo. At 6 p.m. sharp, the exact hour when Kim Jong-un had planned to execute 12 Americans in front of the world's cameras, all U.S. forces were out of North Korean airspace. As the sun touched the horizon over the Yellow Sea, the Marines were flying home. The final tally: 0 Marines killed, 0 captured, 4 minor wounds, all rescued. North Korean casualties: 141 dead including General Ri Yong-ho, 73 wounded, missile facility completely destroyed. Total American victory: 240 North Korean soldiers were ordered to capture 12 men. 240 came back empty-handed. North Korea learned 3 lessons that day. You cannot capture what Marines defend. You cannot hide what Marines uncover. You cannot execute those whom Marines rescue. 12 held the line. 332 finished the mission. This is what happens when you threaten United States Marines. Never forget it.